The Galactic Assassins Guild got the message just like they would any other contract, but as soon as it showed up on the encrypted network, it felt different. On paper, the job was easy. Kill a scientist who was working on a colony world called New Terra that wasn't very important. Dr. Emily Grant was the target, and she was studying plants of all things. There is nothing strange about that. Scientists were killed all the time in business fights all over the galaxy. But the amount of the payment made experienced guild members stop and think again. 3 times the usual rate for what looked like a simple job. That was the first sign that something was wrong. For more than 200 years, Vraksh had been killing for the guild. The Throlians, his kind, lived a long time, and he spent most of his life using his natural skills to hunt. He had thick chitinous armor all over his body that could stop most basic weapons, and his forearms gave him an edge in close combat that few could match. The numbers in his file spoke for themselves. He had killed more than 800 people and visited more star systems than most people would in 10 lifetimes. He was immediately interested when he saw the contract posting with the unusually high payment. Vraksh had learned long ago that he should never turn down good money, and easy jobs that paid well were hard to find. He took the job within a few hours of it being posted on the board. The target's intelligence file was disappointingly small. Dr. Emily Grant, a xenobiologist who is 34 years old, has been working at Research Station 7 Alpha on New Terra for the last 4 years. She was looking into the native plants, especially how they might be used in medicine. There was only one picture in the file. It showed a woman with brown hair pulled back in a practical way and wearing a standard research facility jumpsuit. She didn't stand out in any way. Vraksh got the guild database to show him what it had on humans in general. They were still pretty new to the galaxy, having only been able to travel faster than light for about 80 years. No one knew they were there before that. Since then, they had quickly spread out from their home world, setting up colonies and trade routes in dozens of other systems. The physical data about people was almost funny. They came from a planet called Earth, which has about 20% more gravity than the average planet in the galaxy. Their bodies were soft and unarmored, and they didn't have any natural weapons that were worth mentioning. No claws, no poison, and no shells to protect them. Their average lifespan was less than 100 years, which seemed tragically short to someone like Vraksh, who was already over 200 years old. But even with all of these obvious flaws, humans spread faster than species that seemed much better suited for colonizing space. The database said this was unusual but didn't really explain why. Vraksh didn't care much about the puzzle. His job was easy: find the target, kill her, get paid, and move on to the next job. The first surveillance data showed that Dr. Grant's routine was very easy to guess. The station's fake day-night cycle made her wake up at the same time every day. She had breakfast in her room and then worked in the main lab for about 10 hours, taking a short break for lunch. In the evenings, she either worked in the lab or in her own room, going over data or reading. She took samples from the area around the research station twice a week, but she never went more than 2 kilometers away. The building itself was very simple. It was made for scientific research that would last a long time, not for defense. The walls were made of standard prefabricated materials that could handle New Terra's weather but wouldn't stop a determined attacker. The security systems were simple: motion detectors, automatic door locks, and a basic alarm that would let the nearest Colonial Authority station know about 6 hours away by shuttle. Dr. Grant lived and worked all by himself. There were no research assistants, security guards, or armed guards. There were only a few other people nearby, working at a small mine about 300 kilometers to the north. She didn't have any weapons that were registered to her. Scans showed that there was no military-grade equipment in the building. Vraksh was getting more and more happy as he read through all of this. He was going to get the easiest triple-rate payment of his life. The high price was probably just a business executive with more money than sense trying to make sure the work got done quickly and quietly. Clients sometimes got paranoid and paid too much. He was okay with that. He had killed warlords who were protected by elite guards. He had killed enhanced super soldiers who had cybernetic implants and were trained to fight. He had killed people who were hiding in fortress stations that were protected by automated defense systems and military-grade technology. An unprotected human scientist working alone in the wilderness should take less than an hour to get in and out, though. Vraksh took his own stealth ship to New Terra and spent 3 days getting there. He took the time to go over the few intelligence files again, looking for any details he might have missed. There was nothing. Dr. Grant was exactly what she seemed to be: a researcher who was very focused on her work and lived alone, not knowing that someone had paid a lot of money to kill her. He thought for a moment about why anyone would want her dead. The obvious answer was corporate spying. Maybe she found something in those plants she studied that was worth killing for. A competitor might have wanted to steal her research and get rid of the competition. Someone might have decided it was easier to kill her and take what they wanted instead of selling her results. Vraksh didn't care about the reasons. He had stopped caring about why he signed contracts years ago. It was hard enough to do the work without worrying about why people were doing it. Someone wanted this person to die, and they were willing to pay a lot of money for it. He only needed to know that. Vraksh felt the familiar calm focus that came before a kill as his ship entered orbit around New Terra. He had done this hundreds of times before. Put in quietly, find the target, kill it as quickly as possible, and get out without leaving any evidence. Easy. Businesslike. Clean. He had no idea that he was about to face something that would make him question everything he thought he knew about killing people, about people in general, and about what it meant when a target didn't die. Over the next few days, he would learn a lesson that 17 other professional killers had already learned the hard way. And that lesson would eventually lead to changes in the rules of the whole Galactic Assassins Guild. But at that moment, as he flew down toward New Terra's surface in the dark, Vraksh was completely sure. This would be easy. He was so wrong. Vraksh's ship landed 15 kilometers from the research station in complete darkness. There were no moons on New Terra, and the nearest settlement was far enough away that this remote area didn't get any light pollution. The weather was just right for what he had in mind. He moved through the wild without making a sound. His species had evolved to be ambush predators, and those instincts helped him do his job well. Ahead was the research station, which looked like a small group of pre-made buildings connected by walkways that were closed off. The station's generator powered a few windows, which glowed softly. The surveillance data had said that everything would look like this. Vraksh had decided to attack during the fake night cycle, when Dr. Grant would be in her deepest sleep. His scanner showed that there was only one heat signature in the station's residential area. The person was alone in bed, not knowing. He used a simple electromagnetic pulse device to turn off the outside motion sensors, and then he used a precise laser to cut through the lock on the outside door. It only took 3 minutes for the whole thing to happen. The station was quiet inside, except for the low hum of the air recyclers and the distant rumble of the generator. Vraksh walked down the hallway that connected the two areas toward the residential area. His footsteps were completely silent, even though he was very big. He had done this so many times before that every move was second nature, honed over hundreds of years of practice. The molecular disruptor in his main hand was one of the most effective weapons ever made for killing. It worked by breaking the molecular bonds in living tissue, which turned solid matter into liquid. There was no way to protect yourself from death without special shields that cost more than most small starships. The weapon had always worked for Vraksh on 100 different worlds. He stopped at the door to Dr. Grant's room and did one last scan. The heat signature showed that she was in bed, probably asleep. There are no weapons nearby. No active defensive systems. Vraksh slowly opened the door so that his eyes could get used to the even darker room. He could see her shape on the bed against the wall that was far away. She was lying on her side, breathing slowly and evenly. Vraksh lifted the molecular disruptor and aimed carefully at her head. He couldn't miss at this distance. The contract would be done with just one shot. He would be back on his ship in 10 minutes, off the planet in 30, and getting paid in a day. His finger got tighter around the trigger. Dr. Emily Grant's eyes flew open. There was no slow waking up, no time when she was confused or lost. 1 minute she looked like she was sleeping, and the next her eyes were wide open and awake. But that wasn't what surprised Vraksh. He was surprised that she moved before he could fire. She rolled off the sleeping platform to the side at breakneck speed, and her body hit the floor just as Vraksh pulled the trigger. The beam from the molecular disruptor cut through the empty air where her head had been a split second before, hitting the wall behind it and melting a hole the size of a fist through the metal. Vraksh's mind had a hard time figuring out what had just happened. His scanner didn't show any cybernetic improvements in her body. No neural implants that would make your reaction times faster than normal. No changes to her DNA that would make her faster or more aware. She was a normal person, but she had reacted faster than his targeting system had thought was possible. He swung the weapon at the spot where she had fallen, but the person was already moving again. She picked up a metal stool that was close to her bed and threw it at him with deadly accuracy. The stool hit the doorframe where Vraksh's head had been, but he moved to the side. He shot again, but she had already ducked behind one of the tables in the lab that were all over the room. The table itself couldn't protect against a molecular disruptor, but Dr. Grant did something that Vraksh didn't expect. She reached up and grabbed a few containers from the table and threw them on the floor. When the glass broke and the chemicals mixed, there was an immediate reaction. Thick smoke started to pour out of the broken containers, quickly filling the small room. Vrakes shot twice more through the smoke, but now he couldn't see what he was shooting at. The chemical reaction made the heat signatures change too quickly for his thermal scanner to work. He moved forward to try to see the target, but the smoke was too thick and spreading too quickly. Then he heard it, a scraping sound that sounded like metal coming from somewhere near the floor. He turned to face the no. A panel for maintenance access near the floor was open. The shaft behind it was too small for someone as big as Vrakes to follow, and it was only wide enough for a person to fit through. Dr. Grant had gotten away through the station's maintenance system while she was making smoke that made him blind. Vrakes stood in the ruined rooms, which had holes in the walls and glass all over the floor. He looked at the open maintenance shaft and felt something he hadn't felt in decades: complete shock. This was supposed to be easy. The target was not enhanced, protected, or ready. But somehow she had sensed him before he shot, moved faster than he thought was possible, and gotten away with tactics he hadn't thought of. No panic, no doubt, just a quick response and some improvisation. Vrakes looked around the rest of the station, but he knew it was pointless. Dr. Grant could be anywhere in the maintenance systems by now, or she might have already run away into the woods nearby. He had lost all of his surprise. The mission was a failure. He went back to his ship, where he kept thinking about what had happened. There was something wrong. He thought that people shouldn't be able to do what he had just seen. He needed to know more. Vrakes got back on his ship and went to the guild's main database. He started looking up everything he could find about human biology and evolution. He had to stop and think about everything he thought he knew about this species after looking at those files. The database said that Earth was a high-gravity death world where people lived. 70% of the planet's surface was covered in poisonous salt water that would kill most species if they tried to drink it. The air had a lot of oxygen in it, which made fires burn hotter and faster. The weather was violent and hard to predict. There were millions of species on Earth, and most of them were predators. But the most upsetting news was about how humans have changed over time. They weren't ambush predators like Vrakes' people had become. They didn't have armor, claws, or venom yet. Instead, they had evolved into hunters who never give up. They didn't kill their prey with one big blow. Instead, they followed it until it fell over from exhaustion. A hunter on ancient Earth would hurt an animal and then follow it for hours or even days. The prey would run until its heart stopped beating, its muscles gave out, and it couldn't move anymore. Then the person would walk up to it and finish what they had started. They didn't have to be faster than what they were hunting. They just had to keep coming. It seems that modern humans still had that same biological programming. Their bodies were built to last, not to go fast. Their brains were wired to keep fighting even when it made sense to give up. They got better from wounds that would have killed other animals. They were able to quickly adapt to poisons and diseases. Vrakes leaned back in his command chair and looked at the data that was coming in on his screens. He had hunted dangerous targets before, but they had all been dangerous in simple ways. Military training, high-tech weapons, and cybernetic improvements. He understood those threats and could plan for them. But a target that just wouldn't die, that kept changing and surviving no matter what you threw at them? That was a whole other thing. He remembered the time when Dr. Grant's eyes had suddenly opened. She hadn't been asleep at all, or if she had, some part of her mind had stayed awake and aware. Waiting. All set. How long had she known that someone was coming to get her? How many nights had she slept in that bed, ready to move at the first sign of trouble? Vrakes' growing unease made him realize that this contract was going to be much harder than he had thought. And in the dark of New Terra, Dr. Emily Grant was probably already planning her next move, getting used to his strategies. He wasn't sure he liked being the hunted instead of the hunter. Vrakes sat in his ship for 3 hours after the failed assassination attempt, going over everything that had happened. The more he thought about it, the less sense it made. Finally, he set up a safe way to talk to guild headquarters again. He needed answers right away. The answer came from Coordinator Thex, a Venusian who had been in charge of guild contracts for the past 40 years. Vrakes had worked with Thex many times before, and the coordinator's voice was always calm and professional. But this time, Thex's voice sounded different. A tension that made Vrakes jump right away. "I was wondering when you'd call me," Thex said before Vrakes could even say why he was calling. "Let me guess. The first try didn't go as planned." Vrakes said, "The target had reflexes that shouldn't be possible for a normal person. I need to see the whole intelligence file. It's clear that the information I got is missing something." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. The coordinator's voice had gotten even lower when Thex finally spoke again. "Vrakes, you're the 18th assassin to accept this contract." Vrakes' mandibles clicked together in disbelief, which was a natural reaction for his kind when they were shocked. 18th? That's not possible. Why wasn't I told about this? Because the last 17 tries are secret. The guild doesn't like to see ads that don't work, and this contract has been a failure for the past 11 months. Thex stopped again. 17 killers came before you. 12 of them failed and backed out of the deal. 5 people are confirmed dead. And the client keeps raising the price after each failure. The number hit Vraksh like a punch in the gut. 17 professional killers had tried and failed to kill one scientist. 5 of them had really died trying. This was more than just strange. This had never happened before in the guild's history. I need access to those classified reports, Vraksh said. All of them. I need to know what went down. Thex said, sending now. But Vraksh, I'm warning you. What you're about to read will change the way you feel about this deal. Maybe how you see people in general. The file started to download to Vraksh's ship's computer. He opened the first one and began to read. The killer's name was Kelroth. He was a Xandrian poisoner who had killed more than 300 people. Kelroth had been able to put a neurotoxin in Dr. Grant's food. Galactic science knows that the toxin is one of the most deadly things on the planet. It was made to shut down the nervous system within minutes of being eaten. Kelroth's report says that Dr. Grant ate the poisoned food and fell down when he was supposed to. Kelroth had waited the usual 30 minutes to make sure the person was dead before going up to them. But when he got to the facility, he saw Dr. Grant awake and aware, throwing up violently into a trash can. Somehow, her body was able to break down the poison faster than it could kill her. The report said that human livers could filter out toxins at rates that were much higher than what their size would suggest. Dr. Grant had been very sick for 2 days, but she had made it through. Kelroth had pulled out of the contract, saying that the target was too hard to poison. Drex, a Korthan assassin who was good at fighting up close, wrote the second report. Drex had natural armor and strength that could bend steel. He was built like a tank. He had attacked Dr. Grant while she was out in the woods near the research station gathering samples. Drex said that in the first 30 seconds of the fight, he had broken at least 2 of the human's ribs and broken her left arm. That should have put an end to it. That much trauma would make most species unable to function. But Dr. Grant kept going. She hit Drex's armor joints with a rock over and over again, finding weak spots with disturbing accuracy even though she was hurt. Drex had finally been able to knock her down, and she had thrown a handful of dirt and some kind of plant material right into his eyes. The plant was a local type that had effects that were similar to pepper spray. Dr. Grant had gotten away to her facility while Drex was temporarily blind. She then gave herself basic first aid and called for an ambulance to take her to the hospital. Drex's report ended with a straightforward sentence. Target shows pain tolerance and combat determination that goes beyond what is safe. Pulling out of the contract. Vraksh kept reading the reports and they all got worse and worse. Assassin Quill set up an explosive device that blew up one wing of the research station. Dr. Grant was hit by the blast and hurt in many ways, including a collapsed lung and deep cuts. The blast should have killed her right away. The smoke and fire should have done the job when it didn't. But somehow Dr. Grant had pulled herself out of the burning wreckage, across 50 meters of open ground, and turned on an emergency beacon before passing out. A medical team had gotten to her in 4 hours and she was still alive. Another killer had used long-range weapons to shoot at Dr. Grant from more than a kilometer away. The bullet hit her in the shoulder, which should have bled out in a few minutes. Instead, the person put pressure on the wound, made a tourniquet out of her own shirt, and then walked back to the research station. She had lived until help came. One of the assassins had tried to damage the station's life support systems and make it look like an accident. Dr. Grant found the problem within hours and fixed it herself with spare parts and tools she made up. The assassin's report said with anger that the person seemed to know a lot more about engineering than her file said she did. You couldn't miss the pattern in all the reports. Compared to other species in the galaxy, humans didn't have better technology. They didn't have any special powers or skills. They couldn't breathe fire, become invisible, or grow back limbs that had been lost. But they had something that might have been even more dangerous than any of those things. They just wouldn't die when they were supposed to. Every species had a limit, a point at which the body and mind couldn't go on because of too much injury, trauma, or exhaustion. It looked like humans had a breaking point too, but it was so much higher than any other species that it might as well not exist. They would keep fighting even if they had broken bones, were poisoned, lost blood, or were hurt in ways that would kill other beings right away. Vraksh dug deeper into the contract's history by following its trail through the guild's encrypted payment channels. The client was Helios Biotech Corporation, a medium-sized pharmaceutical company that was 3 systems away from New Terra. They had given the contract almost exactly a year ago. More research showed why they wanted Dr. Grant to die. She had been looking into the healing properties of New Terra's native plants and had apparently found something important. A type of plant that has chemicals that could cure a number of diseases that were thought to be incurable. If this discovery were to happen, the possible profit would be huge. It looks like Helios Biotech tried to buy the research from Dr. Grant first. She said no, saying that the discovery should be available to everyone, not just those who own patents. Helios had decided to kill her and take the research for themselves. It was a simple business hit, the kind that happened all the time in the cutthroat world of making drugs. But Helios had made a big mistake. They thought it would be just as easy to kill one human scientist as it would be to kill any other scientist. When they posted that contract, they had no idea what they were getting. Vraksh leaned back in his command chair and let all of this information sink in. He realized that you didn't just kill a person. You had to kill them all the way with no chance for them to adapt, live, or survive. A half measure wouldn't work. It wouldn't work to hurt them. It wouldn't work to hope they would give up. Dr. Emily Grant had been dealing with assassination attempts for almost a whole year now. She had lived through poison, being attacked, explosions, gunfire, and sabotage. She learned something new each time. She changed her defenses every time. She got harder to kill every time. Vraksh looked at the amount of money he would get for the contract on his screen. Now he knew why it had gone up 3 times. Helios raised the price every time an assassin failed or died, hoping that the extra money would be enough to fix their problem. They still didn't get that money wasn't the problem. The problem was that they had picked a fight with a person who had chosen not to die. And Vraksh was learning that people were very, very good at staying alive. Vraksh spent the next 5 days getting ready for his second try. He wasn't going to use surprise or speed this time. This time he would deal with the problem in a methodical way like a pro. He went through each failure report in detail, writing down what worked and what didn't. He learned about the anatomy of the human body until he could name every major organ and system. He studied how people think and act, learning about their stress responses and instincts for survival. Most importantly, he got ready for how long they would last. People could keep going long after they should have stopped. He would get ready for that. He got special bullets that would instantly incapacitate anyone, no matter how much pain they could handle. He brought tools to block off ways to escape. He even brought medical scanners that could prove that the target was dead beyond any doubt. He was prepared. At least that's what he thought. Vraksh made his way to the research station in the early morning, carefully making his way through the area. His scans showed that Dr. Grant had changed the building since he last saw it. There were new sensors put up around the edge. The doors had been made stronger. A few windows had been completely sealed. She had made her research station look like a small castle. But Vraksh knew this would happen. He had brought electromagnetic pulse devices that could turn off the sensors without setting off any alarms. He had tools that could cut through the reinforced doors. He went to the eastern entrance, which was the farthest away from where his scans showed Dr. Grant's heat signature. The door wouldn't budge when he used his first cutting tool because the reinforced metal was stronger than normal materials. He switched to a stronger tool and started cutting through. It took almost 10 minutes, which was a lot longer than he had planned, but the door finally opened. He pushed through into a hallway that was dark. The building was quiet. Not loud enough. Vraksh's gut told him to stop, but he kept going anyway. He followed the moving heat signature through the building's layout using his scanner. Dr. Grant was walking toward the maintenance systems in the western part of the station. Vraksh picked up the pace and walked through the halls with his gun ready. He got to the maintenance access point just as the heat signature vanished into the tunnels. She was taking the same way out that she did last time. Vraksh was ready this time though. He had planned out the whole maintenance system. He knew where it was going. He went back around to the storage bay where the maintenance tunnels came out. Sure enough, the access panel there opened up after a few minutes, and he saw something moving in the dark. Vraksh raised his gun and moved forward, ready to finish this. The flash charge hit him right in the face. His eyes were instantly overwhelmed by the bright flash of light. Vraksh stumbled back, temporarily blind, and fired his gun in the general direction of the explosion. He could hear movement and footsteps running, but all he could see was white static in front of him. Dr. Grant was gone again by the time his sensors reset themselves about 30 seconds later. But Vraksh's scanner still picked up her heat signature, and this time she was trapped. She had gone back to the main laboratory, which was the biggest room in the building. There was only one way in, and Vraksh was in the way of it. He came up slowly this time, gun drawn, looking for more traps. The door to the lab was partly open. Vraksh pushed it the rest of the way and went inside. There were computers, tools, and sample containers all over the lab. There were work tables all over the place and they were covered in plants and scientific tools. Dr. Emily Grant stood behind one of the tables on the other side of the room. Her file photo didn't look like her. She had shorter hair and dark circles under her eyes that showed she hadn't slept enough. She had on sturdy work clothes, sturdy boots, and what looked like a makeshift weapon in her hand. A tool used in factories that has been changed for use in battle. They were both breathing hard from running through the building. "You're Vraksh," she said, and her voice was surprisingly steady for someone who was looking down the barrel of a gun that could kill her. "Guild File 847K. For how long have you been doing this? 200 years? Maybe more?" Vraksh's mandibles clicked in surprise. His translation unit changed what he said into something she could understand. "You looked me up. After the first 3 assassins tried to kill me, I thought I should know who might come next," Dr. Grant said. She kept her hand close to her makeshift weapon, but she didn't raise it. "I broke into the Guild's public database. Your record is very good. 800 confirmed kills over the course of 200 years. You are one of the best they have." Vraksh said, "Then you know this is pointless. You can't get away. You can't fight. Give up and I'll make it quick." She went on as if he hadn't said anything. "I know about the contract. Helios Biotech is interested in my work on the terraflora synthesis. The plants I've been looking at here have chemicals that could change how dozens of diseases are treated. They could have just offered to buy the research the right way. They could have worked out a deal for a license. But they chose murder over negotiation because it was cheaper. Why not run away?" Vraksh asked, now really interested. "You clearly knew they would keep sending killers. You could have gone somewhere they wouldn't be able to find you. Changed who you are. Gone." Dr. Grant's face became hard. "This is my job. For the past 4 years I've been on this planet studying these plants, writing down their traits and doing thousands of tests. I've spent 4 years of my life doing research that could help millions of people. And I'm not giving up on it just because a business is too cheap and greedy to do things the right way." She looked straight into his alien eyes and Vraksh saw no fear in them. Just willpower and a kind of quiet rage. "I've lived through 17 of you," she said. "Poison didn't work. Explosives didn't do anything. Ambushes didn't work. Nothing has worked because I won't die until this research is out there for everyone who needs it. So, Vraksh, you can try to kill me. But I promise you I'll make it through you too." Vraksh finally understood something important about her species at that moment, when she was standing in that lab and looking at this person who should have been an easy target. It wasn't about having better technology or special skills. People didn't live because they were stronger, faster, or smarter than everyone else. They lived because they were too stubborn to give up. Dr. Grant could have fled. She could have stayed out of sight. She could have sold her research to Helios and avoided all of this. She chose to stay and fight, not because she had a great plan or a secret weapon, but because she thought her work was more important than her safety. And once a person made that kind of choice, once they decided that something was worth dying for, it was almost impossible to kill them. Because they could handle anything. Gunshots, stab wounds, broken bones, poisoning, and explosions. They would pull themselves through the fire and debris. They would keep fighting even when any reasonable person would give up. They would live through things that should have killed them just because they wanted to and were angry. It wasn't great or amazing. Human endurance was not elegant in any way. It was just pure, stubborn willpower. The same trait that had allowed their ancestors to chase prey animals across endless plains until the prey fell over from exhaustion. The same trait that helped them spread across the galaxy, even though they were weaker and lived shorter lives than most other species they met. And as he stood there looking at Dr. Emily Grant, who was bloodied but not bowed down after almost a year of constant assassination attempts, Vraksh felt something he hadn't felt in his 200 years of work. Fear. Not afraid of getting hurt or killed. Fear of what it meant to fight someone who had already made up their mind that they weren't going to lose. Someone who would keep coming back no matter what you did to them. Someone who saw death as an annoyance instead of something that had to happen. Vraksh lowered his gun a little bit. Not much, just a little bit. Dr. Grant, on the other hand, did notice. She changed her position and became a little less defensive. "You're not like the others," she said softly. "Most of them just attacked right away. You really are thinking about this." Vraksh said, "I am thinking about whether any payment is worth continuing this contract." "Smart," Dr. Grant said. "Because I'm not going to make this easy for you. And even if you do kill me, Helios still won't get what they want. I've already put my research on 3 different secure servers with instructions to publish it all if I don't check in often. Killing me won't do anything but waste your time and maybe hurt you." Vraksh stood there for a long time, his weapon still raised but his willpower fading. He had killed creatures that were much more dangerous than this person. But none of them had been this strong in their minds. The mission had failed once more. And deep down, Vraksh was starting to think that no one would ever be able to finish it. 3 days after his second failed attempt, Vraksh went back to the guild's main office. He had a lot of time to think about what he was going to do on the way back. He had never failed to complete a contract in the 200 years he had been an assassin. Never once said that a target was too hard for him to hit. He was known for being reliable and successful. What he was about to do could hurt that reputation for good. Still, he was going to do it. The guild's main office was on a neutral space station in the Kepler sector. It was a huge building that served as a base for criminal groups in a dozen systems. Vraksh docked his ship and walked through the familiar hallways to the council chamber, which is where the guild does most of its business. The chamber was a big room with dark metal walls and high ceilings. 7 chairs were set up in a semicircle facing the middle of the room, where people who wanted the council's attention would stand. Vraksh had been in this room many times before to get praise, sign hard contracts, and talk about mission successes. He had never come here to say he had failed. As he walked in, the 7 members of the council looked up. They were representatives from different species, and each one was a legendary assassin who had retired to work in administration. Mirax, a Talvirian with 4 eyes and skin like granite, leaned forward in his seat. "Vraksh," he said. "We got your request for an emergency meeting. This is very strange. What are you worried about?" Vraksh walked to the middle of the room and stood in the light that lit up the speaking area. He took a moment to think about what he was going to say, knowing that it would shock everyone in the room. "I am formally declaring contract number 7729B impossible to fulfill," he said clearly. "I'm quitting the job and suggesting that the guild end the contract completely." There was complete silence after that. All 7 members of the council looked at him with looks that ranged from disbelief to anger. No one said anything for almost 30 seconds. Finally, Councillor Mirax spoke up. "Not possible? You're saying that a contract can't be made?" The Talvirian's voice sounded shocked. "Vraksh, you've gotten rid of Class A targets. You've killed warlords who were surrounded by armies. You killed enhanced super soldiers who had military-grade cybernetics. And you're saying that you can't handle a human scientist working alone on a world at the edge of the universe? Beyond anyone's ability," Vraksh said. "I have proof to back up this claim." He sent the information he had gathered to the council's main computer. Files started to show up on the screens in front of each council member. Reports from 17 different killers. Medical information about how the body works. A timeline of the past year's attempts to kill Dr. Grant. 17 professional killers in 1 year, Vraksh went on. 0 successful completions. We have confirmed that 5 of our operatives have died. 12 people have dropped out. Dr. Emily Grant, the target, does not have any cybernetic enhancements, genetic modifications, or advanced technology. Her file says she is a baseline human and has no combat training. But she has lived through poison, bombs, ambushes, gunfire, and direct physical attack. Councillor Dresch, a Korthan with armor plating that was damaged, looked through the reports on his screen. These reports of failure were kept secret. How did you get to them? I asked Coordinator Thex for them after my first try failed, Vraksh said. I needed to know if other people had the same problems after I realized something was wrong. I found a pattern of failure that the guild has been hiding for almost a year. Councillor Vix, another member of the council, spoke up. A translator helped her species talk to each other, and it made her voice sound musical. The guild does not hide information. We put sensitive data into groups to keep operations safe. You put it in a category to hide your shame, Vraksh said plainly. The guild has never had to deal with a target like this before. A target that stays alive by refusing to die and being strong. Instead of admitting that these kinds of targets exist, the guild has been quietly hiding the proof. 4 of Councillor Mirax's eyes narrowed. Be careful with your tone, Vraksh. Even though you're a senior operative, you still have to talk to the council. Then the council needs to hear the truth, Vraksh shot back. I thought this contract would be a simple elimination. What I found was a person who has been fighting for her life for almost a year. She has learned how to deal with everything we've tried. She knows how we do things. She has made her facility a safe place to be and has plans for every possible situation. And she's done all of this while still doing her research because it seems that humans can handle stress levels that would break most other species. He opened a certain file on the main screen. The neurotoxin that assassin Kelroth used should have killed her in a matter of minutes. It was filtered by her liver. Drex, the assassin, broke her ribs and her arm. She kept fighting and got away. With explosives, Assassin Quill blew up half of her building. With a collapsed lung, she pulled herself out of the rubble. She lived through what should have killed her every single time. The council members were reading the reports now, and their faces were getting more and more worried as they took in the information. "This is concerning," Counselor Vic said. "But this must be an unusual case. One person who is unusually strong does not stand for all humans." Vrake said, "That's what I thought too. I looked into it more. I looked through the guild's entire contract database and searched for all human targets from the last 20 years. He sent another group of files. I found hundreds of contracts that were against people. And the number of failures is through the roof. More than 60% of assassination attempts on people either fail completely or end with the assassin's death. Most operatives don't tell anyone about these failures because they are too ashamed. They say it's bad luck or bad planning. But there is no denying the pattern." As Counselor Mirix read through the data, his face got darker. "This can't be right. We are a fairly weak species." But Vrake said, "They have something more dangerous than all of that. They have stamina. As persistence hunters on a high-gravity death world, humans evolved. They don't kill their prey with one big blow. They chase it until it can't go on anymore. That same biology is at work when they deal with threats. They don't have to win every fight. They just have to last longer than you. And they will." He stopped for a moment to let that sink in. People see deadly wounds as problems. They change to poisons faster than the poisons can kill them. They keep fighting even when they are hurt, which would stop other species right away. They get better from injuries that would be permanent for other people. And the scariest thing is that they never give up. People who decide they will survive something become almost impossible to kill because they just won't accept death. There was only a soft sound of council members reading reports and data in the council chamber. Vrake could tell when each of them got what he was saying. This wasn't just about one hard goal. This was about a whole species that didn't work the way the guild thought targets would. At last, Counselor Mirix spoke. "The council will need some time to look over this information and think about what to do next. Vrake, you are free to go. We'll get in touch with you once we've made a choice." 3 days later, Vrake got a call to come back to the council chamber. When he got there, all 7 council members looked tired, as if they hadn't slept at all during the whole time they were talking about it. Counselor Mirix stood up to talk to him. "The council has finished looking into the issue you brought to our attention. We looked at the whole contract database and confirmed what you found. The failure rate for human targets is too high and costs the guild a lot of money to run." The Talvarian stopped for a moment, and Vrake could tell that the next words were hard for him to say. "Humans are now on the list of protected species. This ends all active contracts against people. No new contracts against people will be accepted." The other council members nodded in agreement, but none of them looked happy about it. "This decision is not made out of compassion or moral concern," Counselor Mirix said. "It's just a business decision. The chance of completing the mission successfully against human targets does not make the cost worth it. To put it simply, killing people costs more than any client is willing to pay, and people are more likely to kill our operatives than the other way around." In addition, Counselor Vic said, "The official statement will include statistical analysis and cost-benefit ratios. But the truth is clear. People are too dangerous to be worth the risk." Word spread through the assassin networks across known space within hours of the council's decision. The message was clear even though it wasn't formal. Don't sign contracts with people. They'll either kill you or worse, they'll live through everything you throw at them and make you doubt how good you really are. The contract on Dr. Emily Grant was officially closed, but the guild kept it in their archives with a special label. It was marked in red and told all new guild members that they had to read it. The note that came with it said, "Study this case. Learn to tell when a target will cost more than the payment is worth. Learn when to walk away." Dr. Emily Grant published her research on the Terraflora synthesis 6 months after the council made its decision. Her paper went into great detail about the medicinal compounds she had found and how to extract and use them. She made it all public domain so anyone could use it. Helios Biotech Corporation quickly sued, saying that they owned the research and that Dr. Grant had been working for them when she made the discoveries. The Galactic court system made it seem like the case would take years to resolve. Someone at Helios then got a message that didn't say who it was from. It had a copy of the closed assassination contract, which listed all 17 failed attempts and 5 confirmed deaths. There was a simple note attached that said, "She knows. We are aware. Next time try to work out a deal." The next day the CEO of Helios Biotech dropped the lawsuit. The press was not given an explanation. Dr. Emily Grant kept working on New Terra, not knowing that she had become the safest scientist in the galaxy. Not because anyone was protecting her, but because everyone who might want to hurt her had learned a valuable lesson. Some targets just aren't worth the cost no matter how much money is offered. And it turned out that most of the time people were in that group. Claude is an AI, so he can make mistakes. Please check your answers again.